And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
It feels like Judgment Day for a few teams around the NHL right now. Brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. It's time for another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice, Week 11 Waiver Wire Edition. Nick Alberga and Jake Hahn with you. What's going on, Jake?
Not too much, Nick. If you heard that door creaking open behind you, it's the New York Rangers letting everybody in the Eastern Conference back into the playoff race. This episode brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.
Jake, I don't know about you right now, but it feels like a three-horse race. First team to make a move wins. Buffalo, Vancouver, the New York Rangers in that conversation too.
Well, I'd say all the teams in the state of New York they had a rough weekend. Let's just say that. The Rangers, the Islanders, the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, I don't even know what we can say about them at this point. But yeah, it's getting to that time of the year. We're obviously going to get to that trade freeze as well, right? So, I mean, if you want to make a move, you got to do it now. If not, you got to wait till afterwards. And there's some decisions to be made, man. I don't think I was too worried about the Rangers a couple weeks ago, but watching them over the last few games, I'm starting to get real concerned about what's going on there.
It's unfortunate. I'm sorry to say it. I think Peter Laviolette's going to lose his job. You know, famous last words, but you can't fire or trade an entire team, and ultimately it lands on the coach. Easiest scapegoat, I think, in professional sports. We got Chris Meany coming up in about 15 or so. We got Pete Jensen, this week's waiver wire list. But yeah, let's dive into that. The trade freeze hitting on December 20th, but first, a couple transactions in the last couple of weeks. Over the weekend, we got the rare Saturday morning trade here, Jake, and it's Cam Fowler going to the St. Louis Blues from the Anaheim Ducks. What kind of fantasy value can you find in that?
Well, I know you love a good trade, Dick, and what better way to start your Saturday than a Saturday morning trade to sink your teeth into? This one's tricky to me. I don't know how much fantasy value Cam Fowler to St. Louis. They're a team that can score a little bit, but not a lot. They're certainly not going to blow you away with the offense. They've been better after the coaching change and bringing Jim Montgomery in there, so there's been a bit of an improvement. I guess it depends on his usage, power play time. If he can get some of that, then I do think he's going to give some fantasy value, but by no means do I think he's going to be a stud fantasy-wise moving forward. But what did you think of the trade overall?
So he's going to play top pairing minutes. I think as a fantasy owner, I'd be interested in that, albeit he's not playing on either power play unit right now, but we did see him over the weekend with Colton Parayko, played 17:57 at Dallas and 23:50 against the New York Rangers, did fire 2 shots on goal, but I actually think there's more value in Anaheim's blue line now that a veteran like a Cam Fowler is gone. Guys like Olin Zellweger, Pavel Minchikov, and Jackson Lacombe, I think obviously we'll see an uptick in responsibility. But I'm right there with you. I think long-term, standard categories, I don't see much value here in Cam Fowler, although I will say I like the addition for St. Louis.
Yeah, I think what you said, the reverse angle, where maybe it clears a bit more of a path for some of these young defensemen in Anaheim, where nobody's really ran with it, like a Mitnikov, a Zellweger. There's some interesting names there that at times have flashed, but haven't really been able to put it together consistency, so maybe this opens the door to them. I think I'm going to hold on Cam Fowler, just kind of a wait and see. I don't think I'm rushing out to go and grab him, but watching his usage over the next couple weeks and seeing what St. Louis wants to do with him, and maybe we can get some fantasy value moving forward.
This was a very Doug Armstrong move for the St. Louis Blues, so we'll see if it works out long-term for Cam Fowler, who has, dating back to the summer, it sounded like he was in need of a change of scenery, gets it now, going from Anaheim to the St. Louis Blues. Meantime, amidst all the controversy with the Rangers, the Buffalo Sabres, the Vancouver Canucks, and other squads, the Edmonton Oilers, Jake, are really starting to cook. That's 5 in a row, 8 of the last 9. Most importantly, I think in the fantasy world, things seem to be a bit more solidified in the crease. The last 6 for Stuart Skinner, 5-1-0, 1.68, and 9.42. And a big topic of conversation this year in fantasy hockey, Zach Hyman has 5 goals in his last 5. You officially back in here on the Oilers?
So how much did we talk Zach Hyman the first, month or
too
so
much
on this show? Yeah, probably too much. I think he was the lead topic on 3 or 4 straight episodes because it was just, he was struggling so much. And we know he was, you'd had to spend such a high pick on him. Okay, what do you do? Is this just a blip? Should we be worried all season? I still think there might be a little bit of buy low appeal. I think we said it at the time that you could buy low on Zach Hyman. Obviously he's playing a lot better now and he's starting to produce, but I still think there could be that buy low appeal on him if you want to swoop in, because I do think the Oilers are back, Nick. This is just what they do. They take a while to get this engine in gear, and these slow starts to the season didn't feel like McDavid was 100% early in the year. He misses a little bit of time ever since he's come back. He looks like the classic Connor McDavid, which we know is dangerous. Draisaitl's doing his thing as well. So they're starting to look like the Oilers from last year. And you mentioned the goaltending as well. I think that's something that's been very improved from the start of the season. In one of my leagues, I got both Oilers goaltenders, Skinner and Cal Pickard, just to say, hey, I'm going to get every Oilers game. I think that's a good strategy to play moving forward. So if you're a Skinner owner out there, I think I would suggest even going out and grabbing Cal Pickard and handcuffing him and going with both Oilers goalies.
Wow, look at you handcuffing the Edmonton Oilers crease. If I were to say that a month ago, you'd be in last place probably in your league. But yeah, they've turned the corner, which is great to see. And I have that in my notes as well. Every file on that roster, I think there's still an element of buy low appeal just because of the way they started the year, namely when it comes to Skinner. I think there's a lot of non-believers in general out there on Skinner. I think it's a good buy time on him. Ditto for Zach Hyman. I don't think he's going to get to that pace that he did last year, specifically in the playoffs, but I still think there's a lot of value in the player. And the window, suffice it is to say, to bet on this team to win the cup again has closed probably, no?
Well, I think it all centers around Connor McDavid at the end of the day. And when he's going and he's playing at that high level, everybody else is just going to come along for the ride. And I think that was affecting Zach Hyman a little bit early in the season. Now that McDavid's going, I think you're going to see Hyman's production. Can we expect last year's production? That's probably asking a lot, but I think he's still going to score a lot of goals because he's going to be in those areas, Nick. I was going to mention that as well. The futures appeal with them, they never really moved. You're always going to have to pay that Oilers tax, and so much money was bet on them before the season that sportsbooks can't move them down to 13, 14 to 1, anything in that range. So they were basically hanging around 8, 9 to 1 the entire time and saying, okay, if you want a piece of the Oilers, we're not moving the number anymore. So I don't think there's a ton of value in that market right now.
Really unfortunate. I think it got them at plus 800 to start the year, and the number really hasn't shifted back or forth. And there's a reason why they're the perennial contender and the front runner potentially to win the Stanley Cup, and they're finding it. They're cooking here as we approach the second half of this NHL season. Some injury returns. Ryan O'Reilly back in the mix here for the Nashville Predators. He's played a couple games, 2 goals, 3 points. Matthew Barzal back for the New York Islanders, played with Lee and Pajot. JT Miller, we talked about this last week, just needed 1 practice, back in the mix with the Vancouver Canucks. And Matt Zuccarello is a guy who I still think doesn't get the respect he deserves, but off to a pretty decent start since returning 3 apples, 2 games, and he's got that Kaprizov attachment.
We probably throw the word underrated around way too much in hockey and in pro sports, but Matt Zuccarello is the definition of that to me. A guy that's basically been underrated well into his 30s and just does it every single season, produces. Nobody really talks about him. So I'm excited to see him back in that Minnesota lineup, and credit to the Wild. They did a nice job treading water while guys have been hurt, and Jules-Eric out now as well. So Zuccarello is going to pick up right where he left off. I think you could fire him up. JT Miller's the tricky one for me, Nick. I don't know how much you've seen from his game these last couple of games, if he looks right to you, but what are we thinking about Miller here moving forward?
This is a tough one. In one of my keeper leagues, I've been entertaining the idea of trading for JT Miller. Just seems like that type of year for the Vancouver Canucks. They were just such a huge regression candidate for me, similar to how I felt about New Jersey last year. And it came to fruition. And it just seems like something's amiss with that team. I don't know if you feel the same way about the Vancouver Canucks this year.
They do seem a little bit stale. They're doing a decent enough job of kind of just hanging around and not doing too much to be in that top of the Pacific conversation, but just hanging in the wild card spot. Not a lot of pressure from those teams in the Western Conference. So that's affording them the chance to maybe flick the switch, kind of like what we've seen the Oilers do here recently. I just don't know if they have that kind of ceiling that the Oilers do, right? Where they can go and rhyme off 9 or 10 straight wins and be the best team over a month-long period. Watching their games, it does just feel a little bit stale. And there were a lot of numbers pointing to regression last year. Let's be honest. If you watch their games, it felt like everything was going in for them. So maybe this is just what we should have expected, not like a full drop off a cliff, but just Vancouver coming back to where they should be, which is probably a wild card team in the Western Conference.
I'm more concerned with their team president, Jim Rutherford, what he has to say, their head coach, Rick Tocchet. Very, very concerning things coming out of the Vancouver Canucks camp right now. Just lastly, before we get to Pete Jensen, a bunch of players banged up, namely in Toronto's crease. Anthony Stolarz on IR, so Joseph Woll, you have a shot to get him, or Dennis Hildeby. I would scoop them up. Cam Talbot hurt again, so Ville Husso's the guy in between the pipes right now for Detroit. Bo Horvat's out. I think Brock Nelson's a mandatory own in a contract year in fantasy hockey, but if he's out there scooping up Trevor Zegras out at least 6 weeks here with a torn meniscus. We saw Artemi Panarin miss that game against on Sunday, I should say, for the Rangers against the St. Louis Blues. Johnny Brodzinski and Brett Berard, more of like a daily pickups than long-term, adds, even with Panarin, depending on how long he's going to miss. And Philip Gustafsson didn't play on Sunday. Jesper Wallstedt got the start, but a bunch of guys this time here just not feeling great, Jake.
One of my guys I was pimping before the season, Jesper Wallstedt, it only took until middle of December for him to finally start a game. So not the greatest of calls by me. I think that's more of a next year play, but it was good to get to see him in there. And ultimately, if Gustafsson's back, it's going to be the Gustafsson-Fleury tandem. So I don't know if I'm racing to pick up Wallstedt just yet. Obviously, Panarin's a huge name. You hope he's not missing too much time. Are you concerned about Stolarz in Toronto, Nick? I think when it was initially reported, it didn't sound too bad day to day. Now he lands on the IR, but it's retroactive. So I think they're still hoping that this is short term. But I feel like any time a goaltender goes down, nursing any sort of injury, there's a bit of concern for the rest of the season, right?
Jake, I cover the Toronto Maple Leafs. When they tell you day to day, you just don't even look into it, because day to day can be 4 to 6 months. It can be 4 to 6 days. And that's the unfortunate part about this thing. The way I'll answer this, if Stolarz doesn't return this coming weekend, whether it's in Buffalo or home to the New York Islanders on Saturday, there is mild concern, I think, if you're a fantasy owner, because this guy's got some knee issues from the past. They've already brought it up in the market. And it sounded at the beginning that he thought he felt something tweak, and then as a precaution, they're like, okay, stay out of the lineup. But I think if this lingers, I think it's a bigger issue than it is. But as we've indicated earlier on in the year, I mean, it's a volatile position. There's a reason why they have Joseph Woll, and he's a guy that we've been talking about quite a bit in the first couple of months about buying low on. Well, now's your time to use him, right? Yeah,
and I think, like you mentioned too, in a deep league, maybe a skeptical pickup on the Hildebeest, Dennis Hildeby. Just throw him out there, and because he's going to get some starts. Like you said, Joe Woll's terrific. I certainly trust him as a goaltender, but we know he's got his own injury concerns. So I don't think the Leafs want him playing a heavy workload if Stolarz is going to miss a significant amount of time. So Hildeby should be able to get his odd spot start in there as well.
These goalies, man, you just never know. You never know what could transpire. Look at Anton Forsberg the other day, just before warm-up, tweaked something, couldn't go for the Ottawa Senators. You just never know with these guys. Okay, Jake, let's look at this week's schedule. December 16th to 22nd. We got a 51-game slate this week, 3 on Monday, 10 Tuesday, 5 on Wednesday, 9 Thursday, 7 Friday, 11 Saturday, and 6 on Sunday. The 4-game teams you want to target on the waiver wire: Colorado, Edmonton, Florida, LA, Ottawa, Seattle, Vancouver, Washington. That's 8 teams. And the 2-game teams, the Islanders and the Vegas Golden Knights. Anything else you want to dissect there?
Well, Washington's interesting. I think we got a couple names we're going to get into it with Petey in the waiver wire segment coming up here shortly as well. So I got a couple takes on the Capitals. They just continue to roll, man. If we're not giving the Capitals respect before, I don't know what you're waiting for at this point, middle of December, and they just continue to roll.
Man, I'm looking at the standings. I think the pathway is a lot more difficult than people think for the New York Rangers, specifically because of a team, Pete Jensen, like the Washington Capitals, continue to impress. Man, they do not skip a beat, and that Ovechkin guy is probably getting closer to a return here, too.
Absolutely. What's up, guys? And yeah, Alexei Protas is one guy that has had a little resurgence here. Like there was a little blip when Ovi was out, but not really that much. And he's up close to a point per game right now, and not even close to 50% rostered in fantasy. So it's a guy that you jump on now. Ovi comes back. It's his line mate. He's only going to improve from there. So it's pretty obvious to say target teams like the Minnesota Wild, the Washington Capitals, the Winnipeg Jets near the top of the standings. But hey, there are still some guys up for grabs here from their top sixes and playing big roles.
Well, and speaking of up for grabs, this player always seems to be up for grabs, but you got Oliver Bjorkstrand on your list, a guy that maybe doesn't get those consistent top-end minutes because Seattle likes to spread it out, but he always seems to do quite a bit with the minutes that he's given, right, Pete?
Definitely. He's got 8 high-danger goals, so he's among the 90-plus percentile in that category this season. Edge Stats Alert. And, yeah, I've always liked Bjorkstrand for the shot volume. Shot volume isn't as high this year, but he's mixing in and playing a really nice role on that third line with Shane Wright and Eli Tolvanen. I think we talked about Wright last week. I mean, it's keeping going here. So, and Seattle's like a little hit or miss. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but they could bring it offensively, and Bjorkstrand's a big part of that. Remember when he got healthy scratched a couple of months ago, came right back, and he's been great ever since.
I want to give ourselves a pat on the back because after the trade last week with Blackwood going to Colorado, we sort of pinpointed, hey, don't sleep on the name Nikolai Kovalenko. Well, at the time, Pete, he was on the fourth line. Now he's riding shotgun. We love to see that in the top six for the Sharks.
He's pretty good. I mean, a lot of people, when they were reacting to that trade, saying, did Colorado give up too early on Kovalenko? It's a fair point. And, man, some of these teams out there, look at Nashville, the Islanders, right? Teams that are reluctant to rebuild. Look at what the Sharks have put together over the past year and a half since they finally committed to the rebuild. Will Smith's back from injury. They got lucky with Celebrini at number 1 pick last year in the draft. They got the trade, great trade for Jake Wallman. William Eklund's coming along strong. Zetterlund came back in the Meyer deal, and Granlund came back in the Erik Karlsson deal, and now you have Kovalenko. You still have Askarov. The Preds shouldn't have given up on him. So that's why, it's been 4 or 5 weeks in a row now that we're talking about San Jose Sharks garbage time, big roles, and Kovalenko, like you said, with Celebrini, one of the great young talents in the league right now.
I love to see multiple guys on your waiver wire list, Pete, that are 1% owned in fantasy. That means you brought the shovel and you're digging deep today. I love to see that. There's a player on Winnipeg that's 1% owned as well that I want you to hit here because he's been impressing me as well.
Yeah, Nikita Chibrikov. I know Bobby would probably give a laugh at how we're digging deep here for sure. But Winnipeg has had a great second power play all season long and a really good second line all season long through thick and thin. I know they've regressed a little bit since that amazing start, but he has a bunch of points. He's got 4 points in his first 4 NHL games, including 1 on the power play. So I'm really impressed by him. And I think he scored a big goal against Vegas the other day. I was impressed. And he seems fast. Offensive zone time percentage very high. It's a small sample size. But you know what you're getting into with the Winnipeg guys. He's playing with Cole Perfetti and Nemesnikov on the second line. He is a diamond in the rough from the second round in the 2021 draft.
You talk about diamonds in the rough, Pete. I really think and feel like this is a breakout campaign for Logan Cooley. It was a slow start for him, but he's really starting to register points left and right and accumulate things. And let's not forget, this is a highly touted prospect. The last couple years, it takes longer than some guys, but I really like the trajectory right now of Logan Cooley with Utah.
Definitely. He's playing with Dylan Gunther, who's been their best forward this year, even over guys like Schmaltz and Clayton Keller, statistically, fantasy-wise, no matter which way you want to slice it. And Cooley, yeah, he's going apple picking right now. He's racking them up, the assists. So it's fun to watch. He's one of the fastest players out there among the Edge Stats leaders in 20-plus mile-per-hour speed bursts. We saw that early and often from him. Now he's finding the consistency with the line mate and, full throttle ahead for Utah. I'm curious what you guys think about some of these fringe playoff teams in the Western Conference, like St. Louis, right? Like Vancouver, Utah, Calgary's even still in the equation. I mean, who do you like best out of that mix? I might be leaning towards St. Louis under Montgomery, but you could convince me otherwise.
I think I'm going to stick with Vancouver for the time being, Pete. It's so tricky in the West because it feels like there's only really that one spot. But if Vancouver does want to open up the door, I think a team like St. Louis or maybe a Utah, Calgary's kind of just been hanging around there all season as well. It could get to being an interesting race, but I'm still going to trust Vancouver and what they did last year to hang on. Speaking of St. Louis, Pete, me and Nick were throwing around the Cam Fowler trade off the top of the show. I want to get your take on it. He lands on your waiver wire list, so clearly there's something that you like here. I was kind of calling it more of a hold, a wait and see approach, but you think it might be time to take a pickup on Cam Fowler?
It's tough because, he's still playing top pair minutes, but I feel like even though St. Louis, their blue line is not the best in the league, it's a significant improvement over Anaheim, right, in terms of veteran leadership with guys like Falk, always plays big minutes when he's healthy. I like Broberg, so it's one of those things. He's going to be up top with Colton Parayko to start, another stud in blocks leagues and stuff like that. So I'm just looking for maybe it's a little bit more quality versus quantity, and the point ceiling has always been fairly high for Fowler. Even last year, terrible plus minus, but if you don't count it, he had 39 points last year, and he's been at 39 plus points 5 different times in his career. Felt like he was with the Ducks forever, and maybe just gets a little bit of a spark in that big minutes playing for a better team here.
Lastly, Pete, what about in the crease? Who do you like?
I like the Colorado tandem, the Wedgwood and Blackwood. I know they're looking for nicknames. I don't know, maybe say Wood Kingdom or something like that. I don't know what you think. If you guys have an idea for a nickname for the Avalanche tandem. Also, take a look at the Minnesota Wild. I mentioned you could flock to that team right now. Fleury has 6 wins in 8 games this season, and you know I'm on the train that Jake is on with Jesper Wallstedt. So I think that Wallstedt is worth prioritizing in keeper and dynasty leagues, and the Flowers still got it at a high age here.
Oh, he's been great in his final season here in the NHL, the final tour, and it would be great if obviously Minnesota got to the playoffs, which it seems like they're on that pathway to, and just a storybook potential ending for Marc-Andre Fleury. NHL.com/fantasy, where you can check out the entire Week 11 waiver wire list as we bring in the one and only Chris Meaney to turn our focus now to the betting landscape in the NHL world. And Means, great to be with you here on this Monday. Really feels again like Judgment Day in this league, where we're sort of waiting on some decisions here, no?
Yeah, like in terms of coaches.
Yeah.
You look at the schedule on Tuesday and you see Nashville and the Rangers playing. Oh. That could be the end for one of those two teams, right? The Rangers are really struggling at 5-5. It blows my mind. You look at some of the 5-5 numbers, they're right there with the Sharks, which I get it. A lot of love on this podcast here for San Jose, and it's certainly warranted, but it's a team that still gives up a whole lot. The Ducks, the Canadiens. So the Rangers are right there with the bottom feeders in terms of 5-5 play, and if they go and lose to Nashville and say it's a blow, what if it's like a 4-1, 5-1 win? I feel like that's probably the end for the coaching staff in New York.
We can get to Monday night here shortly, guys. But you mentioned Tuesday. I'm going to call Tuesday Car Crash Tuesday, because we got the Rangers and the Preds, and we got the Sabres and the Habs going head to head. Like Buffalo, this is just getting ridiculous at this point. I don't know what we do. Is there any angle you want to play with this, Meany? I maybe specifically focused on that Rangers Nashville game that we're talking about. Is there a team that you trust more there, and where are you at in general on the Rangers? Because I'm starting to get legitimately concerned that they might actually open the door and miss the playoffs this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have the team like the Ottawa Senators, who are playing really good hockey over the past couple of weeks. Their 5-5 numbers are much better than the New York Rangers. They're getting strong goaltending from Linus Ullmark at the moment as well. He's got like a .75 goals against average and a shutout over his last 4 games. But there's really nothing to get too excited about when it comes to the New York Rangers. I mean, Chris Kreider was moved off the line with Mika Zibanejad in the last game. He was playing in the 4th line. Mika had showed signs of turning things around. Artemi Panarin's not 100% at the moment. That's been the best 5-5 line for New York over the past couple of years with him, Alexei Lafreniere, Vincent Trocheck. So, I mean, Jonathan Marchessault has scored a couple goals lately, and Steven Stamkos has hit the score sheet, I believe, in 3 of 4. So I would probably lean with the Preds, to be honest with you, in that game. I think the Sabres and the Canadiens game is probably a little bit more appealing, Nick. I mean, those teams are going through, they have their own issues, of course, but maybe there's more offense in that game. Tage Thompson is scoring goals. I know Peterka struggled lately, picked up a couple of helpers against the Leafs, and then Lane Hudson scored his first goal. He's been picking up assists. So both of those teams give up a whole lot. I could see a lot of offense in that game tomorrow night.
I like that over. I really do. Lane Hudson finally scores his first NHL goal. You could look to Caulfield. You can look to J.J. Peterka. There's just a lot of different guys I think I would look at in that game specifically. If you're looking for offense, it's probably that Buffalo one. Should mention as well, in that New York-Nashville game, I did have highlighted a Steven Stamkos anytime goal.
There you go.
Of course, there's that history there. There's that lineage. I guarantee you're going to hear it in the next couple months. Should the Rangers acquire Steven Stamkos, you know what's going to happen. So I like that play quite a bit. Wanted to ask you about another particular center in Colorado who is having an incredible year, and understandably so. A lot of the conversation and focus in the Hart debate right now is around Kirill Kaprizov. But I wanted to ask you, Means, what Nathan MacKinnon needs to do to set himself apart, because I think it's so hard to repeat as a Hart Trophy winner, but I think this guy's having an unbelievable season. And it's not being talked about enough, in my opinion.
No, it's not. He's been phenomenal. I think I joined Jake, I joined you and Boomer last week, and that was the first question was Nathan MacKinnon and how far is the gap, or how big is the gap between him and Connor McDavid? And I honestly think that he's on the same tier. Like, he's that good. I mean, he's got the speed. He's been doing this for years. He's got a Stanley Cup. He's been a beast in the playoffs over the whole course of his career. He's playing phenomenal hockey, and that's one player and line I'm looking at tonight. And in Colorado's top line against Vancouver, right? You got Nathan McKinnon, Mikko Rantanen, who they both had 5 points each the other night in the game, and Artturi Lehkonen. It blows my mind that people in fantasy are actually dropping this guy. And Lehkonen's got 7 goals in his last 9 games. He's got 7 shots on goal over his last 2, 24 minutes and 4 of 6. So he's playing heavy minutes with the big boys. He has a career high in terms of ice time this season as well. So, you got Nate and Mikko on that line. A good schedule this week coming up, a game against the Sharks and the Ducks, Monday, Friday, Sunday. And then you guys mentioned Blackwood, top 5 save percentage in the NHL over the last 30 days, turned aside 37 of 39 shots in his debut with the Avs. So I really like Colorado tonight, and I'm with you on McKinnon. I think he'd be you can split hairs between him and Kaprizov right now for the Hart, but the Avs are rolling right now. I think there's pretty good value on them in the future market as well.
I think that show you joined us on, Meanie, he was referred to as Phil Mickelson, as an athlete that's living in the shadow of an even better athlete, which I think is a pretty apt comparison. But I'm with you. I think the gap is a lot closer than people think. I don't think it's, McDavid, huge gap, McKinnon. I think it's McDavid, small gap, McKinnon, and then you can have the conversation after that. So you mentioned Colorado in Vancouver Monday night. It's a light card, as it usually is on Monday, but it's a pretty good card. You got a bunch of playoff teams, playoff contenders, and highlighted by Edmonton hosting Florida, a Stanley Cup final rematch. Do you have a feel on this one at all? Edmonton, a slight favorite on home ice. It does feel like they're kind of cranking it up, doing that classic Oilers thing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to echo a lot of thoughts that Nick had earlier in the podcast. I mean, they're rolling at the moment. 5 straight wins, 8 of 9. They've beaten some good teams over this run too. Vegas, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Colorado. The only loss is a 1-0 defeat to Vegas. Stuart Skinner's playing phenomenal. He really is. He's got a 916 save percentage over the last 30 days, 936 over the last 2 weeks, has the couple wins against some of those teams that I mentioned, 2 or fewer goals in 5 of his last 6 outings in fantasy. He's a top 10 goalie over the last 2 weeks. Zach Hyman, I still think that the window is open to buy, because looking this morning, he's inside the top 10 of the most traded players in Yahoo. He's got 5 goals in 5 games since returning, 18 shots over that span, 3+ and 4 or 5. He had a career low shooting percentage at the time when he returned to the lineup, and he still has 11% shooting rate, which is the 3rd lowest of his career. You got to go back to his 3rd year in the show with the Leafs in 2020, early 2013, 14 roughly, where he was really struggling to score some goals. But Florida too, they've lost 2 straight on this road trip. Calgary and Vancouver, they needed a shootout win against Seattle. So I like Zach Hyman, pick up a point, score a goal. Oilers to continue to have some success and pull off the victory tonight.
I'm going to take a shot on the Florida Panthers tonight. I think this is a reminder game that, hey, we won the Stanley Cup last year. Edmonton, we know you're playing well, but I generally speaking, when I bet, I like to take teams after they lose via shutout. They were shut out 3-0, another homecoming for Matthew Tkachuk. I think it's going to be at least a good start for Florida. Wouldn't be shocked if they scored the first goal in that game. I think it's going to be tight, but I think a bit of a reminder game. Stanley Cup rematch to show the rest of the league, yeah, we did win the Stanley Cup last year. So I'm going to take the shot, plus money on the Florida Panthers visiting the Edmonton Oilers. I like the under Vancouver, Colorado, which we talked about. Looking at Tuesday's slate, another game I'm looking at is the over between Columbus and Tampa. And we just add on Wednesday, Toronto at Dallas. Give me the Maple Leafs money line, Jake. They've won 6 straight games against Dallas overall.
I'm going head-to-head with you on Florida Oilers here, Nick. I do like your angle, though, in general, on the team that gets shut out, especially a good team like Florida. You get shut out, it's usually smart to back that team in the next game, but I think this is revenge time. I know you love your revenge. This is the Oilers. They know who's in their own barn. They got close last year, and they're just playing good hockey right now. So give me the Oilers as a small favorite in that game, and also give me Washington. I know Dallas is really good, specifically on home ice over the last handful of years, but honestly, at this point, anytime I see plus money beside the Capitals, I'm just going to roll with it, because I think this team is playing with a lot of confidence. What say you on that one, Meanie?
Yeah, I can get behind that one. The Stars are really good on home ice, but Washington continues to get it done, right? They're getting good goaltending from Logan Thompson. And, Protas was talked about earlier. He's a good streaming option this week. Look for him maybe for shots on goal or for a point. And what I will say about Dallas is that top line is starting to get going just a little bit, right? Jason Robertson has 2 goals in his last 3, 4 points over that span. Rupe Hintz, 11 shots on goal in his last 3. He's got a goal and a couple points over that span. Wyatt Johnson leads the Stars forwards and shot attempts over the last 30 days with 68. He has points in 9 of his past 12 games. So I would look for that top line, and it probably will be a low-scoring affair between the Capitals and Stars tonight.
I love it. I love it. Petey Tybalt in this puppy. What are you looking at? I know you like the Blues to make the playoffs, right?
Yeah, not with full confidence, but they got an interesting matchup coming up this coming Tuesday against the Devils. So I think I like their chances in that game. The Devils are strong, edge stats team. We wrote about them the other day. Almost every category these guys are hitting on, but then, every 3 or 4 games they seem to have a blip. So look for the Blues after the coaching change to maybe pounce on the Devils there. And then I echo what you guys said about the Predators. I feel like the Predators will win that game against the Rangers and really add to the woes going on right now on Tuesday.
Yeah, the Rangers are the big one for me, especially when you get 2 wins away from going to a cup final. The fall from grace, the turmoil with Jacob Trouba as well. Gents, excellent stuff today. Last word to Jay Con. Looking ahead, obviously, to Thursday, but man, we're closing on the trade freeze here, and obviously Christmas into the new year, Jakey.
Getting close to the holiday season, always a fun time. A lot of games, time with family, obviously very nice as well. World Junior's going to kick up soon, which I always really enjoy to watch and gamble on if we can find some value. Last play for me, Ottawa in Seattle on Tuesday night, guys. Meany mentioned some numbers that are favoring Ottawa here recently, and my eyes see the exact same thing. It does feel like this team is starting to crank it up. I know they're tough to trust, but I'm gonna cautiously trust the Ottawa Senators on Tuesday night. We'll see where it goes.
Means you're nodding in approval. Weirdly enough, we're a trifecta here, boys. Pete, I'm sure you're involved in this conversation. Just something about Ottawa, man. They're getting goaltending. Means it's great to see.
And that's it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, looking at their numbers early on, it's their 5-5 numbers are great. I mean, Batherson's been phenomenal too. 4 goals, 6 points, last 4. And Brady Tkachuk he's a freak, man. 32 points in 30 games. Josh Norris is healthy. He's got 12 goals. And last year they tried it, right, Nick? They tried Korpisalo. Didn't work out. They didn't get the goaltending. Allmark did not start off great, but at the moment he is playing elite, and that's it. They just need some stability between the pipes, and they're playing their best hockey at the moment.
All right, coming up Thursday, Week 11 Mailbag Edition. I want to tell you about NHL Unscripted with Adnan Virk and former NHLer Jason Demers, the talk of the town right now in the NHL world. This new podcast is part of the new NHL and iHeart collaboration. Episode 2 is live now, and it features an interview with Don Granato breaking down the NHL coaching carousel, as we just talked about, and the ever-churning hot seat in this league right now. NHL Unscripted is available on the iHeart app, wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, boys, great job today. Thank you to producer Phil Constantino. For Pete Jensen, Chris Meany, and Jay Con, I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.